This week, a new campaign to raise awareness about gambling addiction, a new positioning for a luxury cognac brand, and how to future-proof African brands. Also, an electrifying brand kiss that lit up the night skies. All ahead on Mags on Media. Now, Africa is becoming a prime space for brands and investment. Of that, there is absolutely no doubt. And so with many international super brands taking over the market, how do indigenous African brands survive in this particularly competitive climate? Well, we visited the Johannesburg offices of the Wunderbrand agency, who claims to have an answer.
Well, Wunderbrand started out of a real passion to build brands in Africa. You know, you've heard about all of the big names, the big multinationals, the Walmarts and so on, buying up companies in Africa. And I thought, what about the gap in the market for the B brands, the smaller African brands that we really need to push? Our focus is on building great African brands. And we found a gap in the market where there are brands who are creatively looking at expanding and creating beautiful brands, but don't have the budgets. Future-proofing ties into our trend forecasting process that we use with our clients. And we understand that there's very little research in Africa, so we do quite a lot of primary research. We also use reports from all around the world. One of our partners is in Korea, which does the research for the likes of Samsung and Kia and the Korean government. So we have a mix of local primary research and then the best quality international research as well. And it's important because if you're spending a lot of money on building a brand, you do not want it to be obsolete in 6 months. And the possibility is there. If you look at, ideas are to a penny now. Anyone can, with a Apple Mac and so on, can start a new business or online start a shop and so on. So we really try and help our clients who are spending lots of money on building their brands to future-proof themselves, so that they can last out, weather storms and so on, have a very strong strategy and brand strategy and business strategy. That means their business plans and so on can last more than, and the visual identities and so on will last longer than a pop track. But for a brand that's starting to grow and has very limited time to get a foothold in a market, we can get strategies out that are relevant and useful for them across Africa very, very quickly, because of the experience that we have, firstly in our team, but also in the team of people that we use around the world with great Africa experience. Right now, there's still a space for people who are coming outside of a country into a country bringing expertise. But parachuting in brand strategists and marketers and so on into a country they have very little local understanding for is a strategy that is going to backfire, has backfired on many companies, and will continue to be something that is reduced in the future. So we don't just parachute into a country, do the brand and go out. We go into a country, we are setting up businesses across Africa. We're going to be in 14 different territories in the next year and a half. We are going to have physical people in those spaces. In Nigeria, for example, there are over 200 distinct language groups. So as a foreigner coming in, for me to do a radio ad, a TV ad, I might be offending half the population or a quarter, etc., without even knowing it. Nando's is a great client that we work on, and we do a lot of below-the-line work with them. So we do the nuts and bolts. So if you have a look at menus and you have a look at sort of things in the stores, that's what we look at. But Nando's is not just in SA; it's in Namibia, Swaziland, Botswana, all over, and we work in these territories as well. The local languages, the local expectations are quite different to SA. We can't really see them as provinces, which people often joke about. They've got their different languages, their different holidays, their different things that are important to them. There are two fabulous new companies that we're working on. One is called Coronation Capital in Nigeria, and the second one is Petrolon. And Petrolon is an upstream oil and gas energy company. And these are two new companies which have started from the brand strategy all the way to the design. And their aim is to be not just the best in Nigeria in their field, but the best in the world, and play with the likes of Shell, play with the likes of Investec, play with the likes of Goldman Sachs and McKinsey's and so on. So those are two brands that we'll be working on in a long-term basis that have great potential to reshape how people look at brands coming out of Africa.
To bring life to the potential negative effects of severe gambling addiction, the Havas Worldwide agency has created stunning art pieces out of dice. We're told these pieces are aimed at illustrating the desperate way that life can be for those living with this addiction. With me now is Owen Walsh, Executive Creative Director at the agency. Welcome. Thanks very much for joining us. First of all, before we talk about the work itself and what you're trying to achieve, how did you come by this project?
It was very interesting. I think, as with most genuinely inspiring pieces, it wasn't something we set out to do. It wasn't off a brief. One of my art directors actually went to the Joburg art fair and saw pieces made out of dice for no particular reason than their own existence, kind of like stunt art. And of course the fact is that the dice have the different shadings because of the different numbers, so you can actually create pieces out of them. Guys have done Che Guevara, Mona Lisa, all that kind of stuff, but more just to say, I can do this. And the art director thought, I'm sure there's something we can do with this, the fact that it's actually dice. There must be so it was kind of like a guided missile in search of a target. And we sat and mulled over it and thought, you know, it'd be a fantastic thing, you know, the dice being such an icon of gambling and this thing being such a fantastic and appealing piece, that if we could create this but make it so that it's showing the downside of excessive gambling.
All right, let's talk about the downside in just a moment. But before that, I think sometimes in this country we underestimate how big a problem gambling addiction is.
It is a very big problem. I mean, the National Responsible Gambling Program, which is essentially our client in this case, their mandate is to promote gambling in every form as a form of entertainment, as opposed to something that loses people money. And so it should be, and they go to every effort to make that clear. But it is addictive, and it is very important to show people. And there is estimated something close to 2 million people that are considered gambling addicts.
Well, that is a frightening figure. All right, so you've got the missile in search of the target. You
Yes.
find the target. Talk us through the concept. How was this constructed, and what are you trying to achieve?
The first thing to find was images of the downside of gambling, but pretty, you know, these things are big. They take a huge amount of man hours, so it's not like we could create 20 of them. So we needed 2 or 3 really strong images, but we didn't want it to be terror tactics. We didn't want it to be shock and horror. We just wanted to show that there's a downside. In one instance, your children can suffer, and families and so on. And in a lot of instances, it's as much, if not more, the dependence of the gambler that you know, suffer from the problem as much as the actual person does. So we selected 2, one of a little child sitting in a waiting room, one of a man with his head in his hands. Very generic images of...
Evocative images.
Very evocative images. And it's a time-consuming thing to do, because the nature of it is 6,000... I stand to be corrected, I think it's 6,000...
I'm not going to hold you to the final dice number, but I mean, as we're talking, I mean, we're seeing images rolling of the construction of the dice. I mean, this is a very time-consuming project. Who did it, or was this up to some young intern that was given some bostic and told to go to work?
I wish it was. We all volunteered. We said we were going to have a dice building day. But the truth of it was, because of the nature of the thing, only 2 people can work at it at any given time, literally coming from opposite ends. You can imagine you've got to map the thing out. There's quite a lot of mathematics involved. Once you've done that, then it's literally like cut and paste and putting the things down. But these things are, what, 1.2 by 1.5 meters, so they're big. But you can only have one person at one end, one at the other end, literally sticking one by one by one. And we're talking 6,000 plus per thing. So it was, all in all, we estimated it was around about 20 straight man-hours of time.
Yeah, and hopefully not breathing too much glue, otherwise you would have created another addiction, but let's leave that. But, I mean, really, is this going to make a difference? Is it going to alter perceptions, or simply do you want to spark a debate?
We do want to spark a debate, but we're hoping to do more than that. I mean, I don't think there's a lot of debate over the fact that gambling is a problem. People realize that. It's just to bring attention to it all the time, that constant reminder. And I think the joy of this is twofold. One is that it's a physical piece, and the best way to get it out there is literally to put it on display, which we already have, and we're going to be rolling it out at shopping malls and everywhere we can, basically, across the country. And as you can see, people interact with it. They want to go up and touch it. They want to figure out how we can do it. They want to know how far to stand so you can see it at its best thing, and get in close to see how we made it. So there's a real interaction with this thing. It's very telegraphic. Its message is right there. There's more to lose than you think. And it's great to stand around and wait for people to come up, and you look at their reactions and kind of go up and have a chat with them.
Yeah.
And they go, wow, there's the questions of how did you do it?
That's always very satisfying.
Yeah.
As long as someone doesn't knock it over as well. And Walsh from Havas Worldwide, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, thank you.
Coming up on the programme, we'll speak to an international expert about the growing demand on brand agencies by clients, and also look at a new idea to control how you watch the news.
News that moves. enca.com.